You know all of those plans that I made at the start of November? Well, do what I did. Completely forget that they existed. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am wrapping up all of the books that I got through in November. November for me was a pretty back up there month, and I think that is because I concentrated so heavily on one of my favourite genres to read. I spent so much time reading all of those books and then completely forgot that I had actually put together a NetGalley shelf that I really wanted to get rid of. But I did read a couple of books from NetGalley and I have gotten my score a little bit healthier since. Let's take a look at the reading stats. Over the month of November, I read 8 books and DNF'd a further 2 of them. All of those 8 books that I read were geared toward an adult audience, and I read 5 of them as an audiobook, and the other 3 were all ebooks. I read absolutely no physical books across the month of November. All of that reading totaled up to 928 pages and the total of 45 hours of reading. When it comes to the genres, I read 7 romance books and 1 non-fiction book. Not entirely great when you want to think about non-fiction November, but the star ratings were pretty mixed bag this month. 1 book got a 4.5 star rating, 1 book got a 4 star rating, 1 book got a 3.5 star rating, 1 book got a 3 star rating. 3 books got a 2.5 star rating, and 1 book, which was non-fiction, didn't get any rating at all. Sadly, all of the 2.5 star books that I had read this month were books that I was reading for the Goodreads Choice Awards. I had planned out a vlog where I was going to read the books that got into the top 10 and then blind rank them and see how my predictions would match up to the actual ratings that they had been given. But I was having absolutely no joy with reading any of these books, and all of them were coming out as such duds for me that I just killed the project. But I am still going to tell you about them, so stick around for some pretty spicy tea later. Starting as usual with the books that I DNF'd, and the first one that I put down was one that I had picked up all the way back in September. That was Wespennest by Lee Childs, and that was the German translation of Worth Dying For, which is one of the Jack Reacher books. Across 2024, I had a goal to read an entire book cover to cover in German that I hadn't read before in English. And I chose this one because I was told to. I've been watching the Jack Reacher series on Amazon. I have seen the 2 movies that star Tom Cruise in them. And I thought I would pick up Worth Dying For or Wespennest because it just sounded like something that would work for me. And it just didn't. For a lot of the story, I felt like I was just plodding along with it. There was nothing really that kept me so entertained and so engrossed that I had to come back to the story, that I felt like I really needed to find out what was going on. I don't necessarily think that my issue was with the language, because for the majority of this book, I understood what was happening. I understood what was going on. I was linguistically following along with it. It's just that the story didn't give me anything. My next DNF was Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. This has been on my TBR for a couple of years. I've been suggested it by a couple of people. I've been suggested it by someone that I was doing personal training with because they said that this is something that when you take it all in, it will hopefully help to improve your sleep quality and your sleeping habits. And I think that it will if I do go back to it. I think I've put this book as a not for now rather than as a straight up DNF. Because in the foreword, Dr. Matthew Walker says that this is the book that you can kind of dip in and back out of. You don't necessarily need to have read it all in the one swoop. You can go back and read part 2 and then read part 5. It doesn't even need to be read in a linear capacity. But I had to put it down in November because it was just so heavy. There was so much to take in. There was so much to sit and process and think about. And I felt like I was making such slow progress with this book. I felt like I was reading it for about 3 or 4 weeks across the entire month. And that's a really long time for me to stick with one book, particularly when it's one that's so heavy and so wordy and so scientific. I just needed to take a break from it. On to the books that I did finish across November. And the first book that I finished really set the month up on a high. That was Business Casual by B.K. Borison. I know that my friend Brittany from Brittany Loves Reading absolutely adored this book. She gave it 5 stars and we had been talking about it back and forth when I was reading it, and we just had such a great time reminiscing and catching up about the book. This is the 4th book of the Ingla Wild series, and it is following Charlie and Nova. Charlie and Nova meet at Stella and Levi's wedding, and they hit it off instantly. They hook up with one another, but they have decided that this is just going to be a one-night thing. They're not going to continue anything further until Charlie is back in Inglewood. He has taken over his sister's farm while she's on her month-long honeymoon in Europe, and Nova and Charlie start to get to know each other a little bit better while they're in such close proximity. He helps her out with organising her tattoo studio and organising the redevelopment, the redesign, the rebranding. And he also loosens the ties that he has on New York City and all of the ties that he has on the big financial corporate world, and starts to discover a bit of a slower pace in life. I really loved the chemistry between Charlie and Nova. It absolutely popped off the pages. And I think that this book series has gotten spicier as they develop, because this book was way off the charts when you compare it to Love Life Farms back then. There is a lot of chronic illness representation in this book, and I genuinely think that it was done really well. Charlie has ADHD, and the kind of ADHD brain fog and brain fuzz that you can go through was so well portrayed in here. I also really enjoy reading about Nova's experiences with migraines, which sounds like a really weird way to say it, but I feel like this was portrayed in such a fantastic way. I myself have suffered from migraines on and off over the past couple of years, and I think that B.K. Barson really encapsulated what it feels like when you can just feel that boiling point being reached in your head, and everything starting to go black and everything starting to go fuzzy, and then needing to just sit down in a quiet and darkened room and just let it wash over you as best as you can. It's something that, having gone through it myself, seeing it in the pages of a book was so validating. Sometimes a book can feel like the small town in it is a character in itself, and that is truly a situation in Inglewood. You know all of the characters from having spent the 4 books getting to know them. You know their backstories, their life stories, what they're doing now, and I truly love saying goodbye to them in such a proper way. The town meetings that Charlie and Nova go to every Thursday also felt very Stars Hollow-esque. If you've ever seen Gilmore Girls, you'll know that Taylor is an absolute champion of having those town meetings every now and then, where he will discuss things that have been happening in the locality, businesses that are going to be open, or debates that need to be settled. And it felt like watching a Taylor Dozy taking over a town hall meeting situation. I am truly devastated that we are going to have to say goodbye to Inglewood, and I've absolutely loved discovering B.K. Barson's writing this year. I know that she has got a book coming out in about February or March of 2025 that is a retelling or a reshaping of Sleepless in Seattle, one of my all-time top tier rom-coms, and I am so excited to see what that's going to be like. My next read in November was Friends in the Golden Age of the Sitcom by Joanna Hagan. This is a look back at Friends, one of, if not the defining sitcoms of the 1990s, but it doesn't just take a look at Friends year to year, season to season, episode to episode. It also takes a look at some of the other sitcoms that came before it, such as Cheers, such as Seinfeld, but it also takes a look as well at some of the ones that came after it, such as Scrubs, such as New Girl, and all of the impacts that these have had on popular culture over the last 30 or so years. At times, reading this book felt like reading somebody's thesis for their PhD or for a master's, but at times it felt like a badly researched PhD thesis, because a lot of the information that was put in here wasn't exactly correct. It says that Ross's girlfriend in season 8, Bonnie, who is actually Ross's girlfriend for a couple of episodes in season 4. Mona is actually the one that he was going out with for a little bit of the early season 8. And there are a couple of quotes that are misattributed, such as in the one where Ross got high, when they're looking through the cookbooks, it says that Chandler is the one who screams out at Ross. It says that Ross is the one who screams out at Chandler for having the pages stuck together, when actually that was Joey. It was a couple of things that I thought they were so easy to verify, they were so easy to make sure that you were correct, it just would have taken that 10 seconds to polish it off a little bit better. Another screaming error throughout the entire book is that Joanna Hagan spells Courtney Cox's name wrong. She leaves out the E that is in the middle of Courtney and just calls her Courtney, which is, again, something that is so easy to get right. It's so easy to just double check, oh, have I spelled David Schwimmer's name right? Did I put the C in? Oh, have I spelled Lisa Kudrow's name right? Have I gotten the right Matt here that I'm supposed to be talking about? There's so much that just should have had that little extra attention to detail that was just missing out for me. It's hard to tell who this book is intended for. If it's for people who've never experienced Friends before and who are looking to get a little bit into it, it might be full of a couple of spoilers, but it's not really something that they're going to reach for if they have no interest in the situation, if they're not really looking to get in that deep of a concept. But if it's also for Friends super fans, it doesn't really have any information that they don't already know. There wasn't anything that really struck me as surprising or new knowledge in this book, and I would have a relatively encyclopedic knowledge of Friends. I was reared on the show. So I don't really know who this book was intended for. It might be for somebody who is just slap bang in the middle, but I'm not slap bang in the middle. I am very much on this end of the scale. Then I very quickly read Only Santa's in the Building by Alexis Daria. This is the 5th book in the Under the Mistletoe series, and I don't know if I'm going to continue any of the rest of them on, because this book existed. It was fine. It's not a book that I'm going to return to. It's not one that I'm immediately rushing out to try and find any of the other ones in it. It kind of just passed me by. This is about Evie and Theo, who live together in the same building. And one evening there is a Christmas party happening at one of their neighbors' apartments upstairs. So Evie decides that she is going to dress literally to impress and puts on the tightest jeans and the skimpiest t-shirt that she can find and heads up dressed as a very sexy Santa. While she is there, she and Theo really hit it off. They have been kind of having back and forward conversations, but nothing has ever really developed between the two of them until Evie gets to the party. They head home together and a steamy night of fun happens between the two of them. I did think that everything that happened at the end of this book was a little bit too rushed. Evie brings Theo back to meet her family after about 2 weeks of knowing each other and dating, and for me that's just a little bit too quickly. I also thought that it was a really nice representation of the grief that Evie was experiencing in the first Christmas without her grandmother, with whom she was really close. And I thought as well that it was really nice that Evie was a comic designer and that was kind of heavily focused throughout the book. But it was just fine. It's not a book that I'm going to reach out for again, and I don't think I'm going to continue on with any of the other series. But if you're looking for something short that's going to get you through the Christmas period, this is the way to go. Then I read 4 books in preparation for that now abandoned Goodreads vlog. The first one that I picked up was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Abby Jimenez and I have had a very up and down relationship. I really did not enjoy the friend zone at all, but I had a really good time with part of her world. I didn't read the second one in the series, but I picked up Just for the Summer because it was on the list and I was pretty confident it was going to make the top 10. It did, and I'm kind of glad that it did because this was the one of those books that I had read for that vlog that I had the best time with. This is about Justin and Emma, who meet in a very strange way. Justin posts an AITA post on Reddit, or an Am I the Asshole post, where he asks strangers on the internet to tell him if he is being an asshole towards his friend Brad, or as he names him on the internet, Chad. It turns out that Brad has stolen Justin's girlfriend from him, and Justin has realized that he has got a pattern. He is basically the husband preparation. Any woman that breaks up with him, or that Justin breaks up with, the next guy that she dates is her husband. Every time. Emma is reading through this post that one of her friends has sent her, and she realizes that she has the exact same thing happening to her. Every guy that she dates and every guy that she breaks up with, he instantly finds the one almost the second that she and he break up. So she gets in touch with Justin, she lets him know that this is exactly the same thing that's happening to her, and they spike up a conversation. Emma is a kind of a traveling nurse, and she spends 6 weeks in this hospital, then she will travel the country and spend another 6 weeks in contract in this hospital. Justin convinces her to put aside her plans to go to Hawaii, and that she and her friend Maddie should actually come to Minnesota and spend a couple of weeks with him, getting to know him, and they should see if there's anything that can be taken from this friendship that has erupted between the two of them. I thought that was insane. Is there anybody in this world who is going to turn down a trip to Hawaii to go and live in Minnesota for 6 weeks? But Emma does. She brings her friend Maddie in tow with her, and she and Justin get to know each other a lot better. They spend a little bit more time together, and they start to learn about each other's quite eccentric family situations. Justin's mother is about to go to prison, and he is now going to be the sole guardian for his 3 younger siblings, and we find out the reasons for why she is going to prison without the course of the book, and how he is struggling with that, and also the struggles that he has with this new fatherhood role that has been basically flung upon him. Emma also has a very fractured relationship with her mother. Her mother is a very flighty person who will turn up for a couple of weeks and then disappear for 6 months. Then she'll come back for a fortnight and then she'll disappear again for 2.5 years, and you just never hear from her unless she's looking for money. When Amber, who is Emma's mother, hears that Emma is going to be staying in a wonderful lakeside villa that has been sponsored by her boss at the hospital, Amber turns up at the front door and decides she's going to be staying in Minnesota too. She gets to know the hospital, she gets to know Emma's boss, and they start dating one another. And Emma is always on tenterhooks as to when her mother is going to implode her life again, when her mother is going to disappear, when she is going to have a massive meltdown and everything is going to come crashing down. As you can imagine, this does happen throughout the course of the book, but you also learn a lot of things about Emma's childhood and a lot of the kind of subterfuge and the lies that Emma had been told throughout her life. There is a really nice situation towards the end of the book where Emma finds out a little bit more about her past, about her family, starts to reconnect with some people, and I thought that was a really nice full circle way to come throughout this book series. There were people that I had met in the first book, Part of Your World, that came back in again, and I know that the main couple in the second book also appears in this book in some faction as well, and I think that that's such a nice way to tie up a book series. If I had a nickel for every time I was reading a book for the Goodreads Choice Awards vlog where the main character's name was Emma, she was a bit of a people pleaser, and throughout the book she celebrated her birthday, I would have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it is weird that it happened twice. And it also happened in the RomCommers by Catherine Center. This was the first Catherine Center book that I had ever read, and my expectations going in were sky high. This is about Emma and Charlie. Emma is a struggling screenwriter, and she has been spending the last 10 years or so of her life taking care of her father. He was left paralyzed following an accident 10 years ago, and Emma's life basically turned over on its head that day. All of her aspirations, all of her plans, all of the things that she was looking forward to, all fell to the wayside so that she could take care of her father. Her sister has just come back from college, and she feels that this is now Sylvie's time to start taking over some of the responsibility. And Sylvie could not agree more, because Emma has just been presented with the opportunity of a lifetime. Just so happens that Sylvie got exactly the same thing. Sylvie has been offered a medical fellowship, but Emma has been offered a chance to work with Charlie. He is one of the world's biggest screenwriters, and he has got magical fingers. Everything that he touches turns to gold. It is Oscar winning. It is up for Emmys. It is up for Golden Globes. Except when he starts writing a rom-com, and it tanks. Emma has read through the draft of the script, and it is absolutely appalling, and she knows that this really needs a script doctor who's going to come in, who has a really encyclopedic knowledge of the rom-com genre and is going to steer it in the right direction. Logan, who is Emma's childhood friend and also her agent, gets her in touch with Charlie and says that she is basically the perfect person for this job. So she's going to come and live with Charlie for a couple of weeks, and they're going to get to know each other a little bit better, get to know each other's writing situations a little bit better, and hopefully bring the next big blockbuster to the screen. Except that Charlie has no idea that Emma is even coming. And then there is this whole back and forth for, I'm not kidding, about 12 chapters, where Emma just constantly has one foot on the plane back to Texas. She is this close to telling Charlie that she's going home. She wants to throw everything to the wayside because there are some little tiny things that have happened that Emma is putting everything into doubt. And I got so tired of this repetitiveness. I got so tired of reading Emma saying that she wanted to go home and that the next morning she was going to book a flight way back to Texas and never going to see any of them again. It just got way too much. There was something throughout this book that I really did not enjoy at all though. Charlie has a massive health issue about 4 or 5 years ago that is coming towards a resolution throughout this book. And this is used as a plot device pretty late on into the book. And as soon as that plot device even turned its head towards me, I was instantly turned off. It's the kind of thing that I don't think should be made a plot device at all. Something like a medical issue should never be made fun of or poked at in that kind of a way. So when I read that that was happening, and when it registered in my head what was going on, I was out. Then I read This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune, and I actually had a pretty okay time with this one. This is about Lucy, who about 5 years ago comes to Prince Edward Island with one of her friends, Bridget. But Bridget's flight is delayed, so she's not going to make it until a day after Lucy arrives. Lucy heads to the local pub and she orders a couple of oysters and settles herself in for the night, and she really strikes up a friendship and a kind of a frisson with Felix, who is the bartender at the pub. Bridget has 3 rules for her and Lucy's time on Prince Edward Island. They have to forget about what's happening back in Toronto, which is where they live. They have to eat their entire body weight in oysters while they're there. And Lucy is not allowed to fall in love with Bridget's brother. Uh-oh. Guess who the bartender at the bar is? A couple of years later, Bridget is about to marry her fiancé Miles, who is originally Australian and has been living in Canada for a couple of years, and Lucy is now taking over her aunt's flower shop after her aunt's passing about a year ago. She's kind of struggling with the whole business ownership and everything that it entails, but Lucy has been summoned back to Prince Edward Island for a week. Yes, it is just the week before the wedding, but Bridget is pretty much in crisis mode and she is not telling a single person what is going on. Not even her brother Felix, who Bridget lovingly refers to as Wolf, but nobody knows what's happening. They go back to Bridget and Felix's parents' cabin on the island and they spend a little bit more time together, and Lucy tries to crack out what is happening from Bridget. She also spends a lot more time with Felix and their feelings really start to develop over this week. I will admit that for quite a lot of this book, I didn't really want Lucy and Felix to end up together. I felt like their relationship was very surface level. It was really insta-love. I didn't feel like there was anything that they were really working towards. It felt like a very sexually driven relationship. But as they start to get to know each other a little bit better, and as you see flashbacks of them in the couple of years between their first meeting and now, you actually start to see a real friendship develop between the two of them. I was really let down by the reason that Bridget wasn't speaking though. I was really let down when we actually discovered what was happening between her and Miles. It felt like it was blown way out of proportion with how Bridget was reacting to it and how secretive she was about it. And it felt so anticlimactic that was what was really happening. I think it was the better of the books that I had read for the vlog. And I think I will go back to Carly Fortune's writing. I've had a good time with the books that I've read of hers so far. I have got one left, which is Meet Me in the Lake, her middle book. And I'm probably going to leave that one until next summer. Then I read Wild Love by Elsie Silver. This was the first Elsie Silver book that I'd ever read, so I didn't really know what to expect when I was going in. I have got a copy of Flawless, which is the first in the Chestnut Spring series, but that's still on my TBR and I haven't actually picked it up yet because I've read some mixed things about it. Wild Love is about Rosalie and Ford. Ford has just been named as the world's hottest billionaire, which is a bit of a surprise to him because he was such a nerd when he was growing up and he never really got any attention from the girls in his class. When Ford was about 19 years old, he really wanted to go to a concert one evening, but his father wouldn't give him any of the money that was needed. So he decides to go to a sperm bank, donate some sperm there, and use the $100 or so that he gets as a payment to fund the concert tickets. 12 years later, Cora turns up on his front door and says that he is her biological father. Her father has just passed away and her mother is ill and being cared for, and Cora needs somebody to take care of her. We also follow Rosalie, who has just come back to Rosewood after a huge incident at work. She has been sexually harassed by her boss and she needs to flee the town and kind of come to Rosewood and just free her mind. While she's here, she and Ford get to know each other again. Ford is her brother's best friend and he has always felt off limits to her, and consequently, Rosalie has always felt off limits to Ford as well. Rosie is hired by Ford as his personal assistant at the record label that he owns, and they start to really strike up a relationship with one another. It starts out to be very sexual, and then it just goes from there. And I didn't think that was written well at all. Having gone from a job where she was sexually harassed by her former boss into a job where she is sleeping with her actual boss now, I didn't feel like there were any discussions of boundaries or things that would have been okay or things that would not have been okay. I think they just went in a little bit too fast too soon. Rosie is also, to be so polite to her, a fucking idiot sometimes. She will completely miss the point when Ford is telling her how much he really likes her. For example, when he's going to a massive ball a couple of days later and Rosie has found out that he's planning to bring a +1 with her, and she's going through an entire Rolodex in her head of, oh, who could he be bringing? Is it this person? Is it this person? Is it this person? Without looking at the blindingly obvious answer that it's her. I thought it was really sweet that Rosie and Cora had such a really nice relationship when they were just getting to know each other, but I also felt like it was a little bit strange that Cora turned up in the first place. I felt like there wasn't really any kind of legal requirement for Ford to have been there for Cora, as all he had really been involved with for her was a sperm donation. I thought it was a little bit strange, and I don't really think that it was ever explained as to why she went to look for him rather than when she went to any other family members. It just didn't really work out for me. Then I finished out the month with what was the worst book of the entire lot. I read The Cinnamon Bun Bookstore by Laurie Gilmore after promising myself that I was not going back to this series at all. But the Goodreads Choice Award had this on the list, so I had to persevere. This is about Hazel and Noah. Hazel is working in the local bookstore and she's about to turn 30 years old, and she knows that this means that all women's expiration date is exactly that day. That if they're not married and if they don't have children, that is it. They are taken out the back and summarily shot. She's noticing that there are a couple of lists and notes left in some of the romance books dotted around the bookstop, and that has some ideas for things that she can do to kind of tick off a bucket list before she turns 30. To go to a fun fair, to spend the day at the beach, to go on a Ferris wheel. Some of these were so blindingly obvious as to how have you not done this before in your entire life. Like, she lives in a harbour town. It's so obvious that she's been to the beach before. And okay, you can understand the Ferris wheel one because she's afraid of heights, so this might help to overcome her fear of heights. Hazel enlists the help of Noah, who she is pretty sure is the one actually leaving the notes in the first place, to help her to do some of these things that are on her new bucket list. And while they are together, they start to get to know each other a little bit better, and a spark really starts to ignite between the two of them. I would describe this book as all of the spice, none of the flavour. This book was way too smutty for what it actually was. I even skipped over some of the sex scenes that were in this book because they just felt gratuitous. They felt like they were completely unnecessary. They didn't really advance the plot in any way. And I just cringed reading most of them. But overall, the writing was really lacking for me. I would have given up with this book if it wasn't for the Goodreads Choice Awards, because there was just nothing in there that made me want to read them a lot further. When you find out who it is that is actually leaving the notes for Hazel, because spoiler alert, it's not Noah, when you find out who it actually is, it kind of makes absolutely no sense. Because of what they have been encouraging her to do and how they have been encouraging her to spend her days, it's not somebody who you think it would be. Something that I wish had been addressed more in this book is Hazel's family situation. Hazel's father is gay and he has been married to his husband for years and years, but one of her fathers and her mother had a baby together about 30 years ago, and that baby turned out to be Hazel. This is a situation that isn't so common either in the world or in the world of books, and I really wish that this dynamic had been explored a little bit more and that we had seen a little bit more of how that had worked, or found out a little bit more about how it was in Hazel's childhood, because that's such a new setup for me. I just wish I had seen a little bit more of it. A big gripe that I had with this book was the audiobook narrator. I listened to the audiobook of this and it was narrated by Regina Reagan. Regina is in her 50s or so, and she has the voice of a woman who's in her 50s or so. But when Hazel is her 30-year-old woman, the voices don't match up. And that is something that really took me out of this book, because Hazel sounded too mature for what her age was, and she acted too immature for what her age actually was. So for me, that huge disconnect did not work for me at all. This is, for me, the final book of the series. I am not going to go on with the Christmas Tree Farm, and I know who the couple in that book is going to be because it was set up in such a blindingly obvious way in this book. I have no interest in continuing this book series on further. Laurie, reading your books has been something. Those are the books that I managed to read across November. What was the highlight of November for you? Or do you want to be a little bit salty and tell us what the worst book you read in November was? If you would love to leave me a comment but you can't think of anything you'd like to say, then just leave me a red scarf emoji, because November got pretty cold over here. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.